Jonathan arrived at the hotel late at night. He was exhausted after a long day of travel and just wanted to get to his room and get some sleep. The hotel was an old, Victorian building, with creaky floors and a musty smell that made him feel uneasy. As he made his way to his room on the third floor, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He kept turning around, but there was no one there. When he finally reached his room, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. But as he opened the door, he noticed something strange. The room was filled with old, antique furniture that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The bed was covered in a thick layer of dust, and the curtains were frayed and moth-eaten. Jonathan felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that he was the only guest on this floor. He tried to brush off the feeling of unease and went to bed, hoping that he could get some rest before his meeting the next day. But as he lay in bed, he heard strange noises coming from the room next door. It sounded like someone was shuffling around, moving furniture and knocking things over. He got out of bed and put his ear to the wall, trying to make out what was happening on the other side. As he listened, the noises grew louder and more intense. It sounded like someone was in a rage, tearing the room apart. Jonathan tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but the noise was too much to bear. He decided to call the front desk and ask them to check on the room next door. But when he picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. He tried to call again, but it was the same result. He realized that the phone was dead. Jonathan started to feel a sense of panic rising in his chest. He was alone, with no way to call for help if something went wrong. He decided to go down to the front desk himself and tell them what was happening. As he made his way to the elevator, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, but there was no one there. He started to walk faster, but the footsteps grew louder and closer. He broke into a run, but it felt like he was running in slow motion. The footsteps were right behind him, getting closer and closer. He finally made it to the elevator and hit the button repeatedly, but it wouldn't come. The footsteps were getting louder and more intense. Jonathan was sure that whoever was behind him was going to catch him any moment now. But then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the footsteps stopped. Jonathan looked around, but there was no one there. He felt a cold breath on his neck, and then everything went black. When he woke up, he was lying on the floor of the hotel lobby. He looked around, confused and disoriented. The front desk clerk was staring at him with a mixture of concern and fear. "What happened?" Jonathan asked, trying to sit up. "You were found unconscious in the elevator," the clerk said. "We don't know how long you were there. Did you have a nightmare or something?" Jonathan shook his head, trying to clear the fog from his mind. He couldn't remember anything after the footsteps stopped. He decided to go back up to his room and get some rest. But as he got in the elevator, he noticed that it was covered in dust, like it hadn't been used in years. When he got to his floor, he saw that the room next door was empty. There was no sign of anyone ever having been there. Jonathan realized then that he had experienced something truly terrifying. He had come face to face with a presence from beyond the grave. The old, haunted hotel had claimed another victim, and he was lucky to have survived. As he got into his bed, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He tried to close his eyes and go to sleep, but the eerie silence of the hotel made it impossible. Suddenly, he heard a voice whispering in his ear, "You should have never come here." He turned around, but there was no one there. The room was filled with an icy chill, and he could feel the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. In that moment, Jonathan realized that he was not alone in the room. He was sharing it with a malevolent entity that was determined to drive him out of the hotel, or worse. The last thing he saw was a dark figure looming over him, with a sinister smile on its face. Jonathan closed his eyes, hoping that it was just a nightmare and that he would wake up soon. But he never did. The hotel staff found his lifeless body in the morning, still lying in the same position in which he had fallen asleep. There were no signs of foul play, but everyone who saw the body knew that something sinister had happened to Jonathan. The hotel was shut down soon after, and it remained abandoned for years. But those who dared to venture inside claimed to hear strange noises and see ghostly apparitions wandering the halls. And the legend of the haunted hotel with the malevolent spirit that claimed the life of a young man named Jonathan lived on, as a warning to all who would dare to visit the place.